Hey everybody, Friday evening, finally landed back here in the North Studio. Happy to be here with you tonight. It's Coach O'Connor. I got a little quick training for you. I want to kind of go way back with you. It's like, why is this guy talking to me about parenting? Who is he? So I remember it was about 1980. And I came home and my dad had cut out a newspaper article and he said, I want you to go for this job. And the newspaper article said, child care worker wanted 2 years of college. Well, I had no college. And I didn't particularly like kids. So I said, Dad, I don't like kids. And I'm going to trade school, I'm doing well. And he said, then I don't want you to live here anymore. He didn't approve of my lifestyle. My lifestyle was go to trade school and then go drink and party and raise all kinds of cane. So here we go. I said, okay, I'll go by there. And I took the little article and I drove by this place. And it was like a village, a gated village. And I thought, this is a pretty cool place. And I drove in and I was watching and there was kids riding bikes, which I knew how to do because I was blessed to have an older brother who taught me how to ride a bike. And there was kids playing baseball, which I was gifted in baseball. And I was thinking, I could probably do this job. So I went up and I knocked on this big, gigantic wood door. Boom, boom, boom. And a nun answered the door. And I was like, okay. And I had seen the flying nun and the singing nun, so I knew how to deal with these nuns. And I was like, sister, I'm here to apply for this job. She's like, great. What college do you go to? Now, she had me because I didn't know any college names, or I probably just would have kept rolling with it. I said, sister, I just have a GED. She goes, oh, you want the maintenance department. You want to work with Ed. You got to go down this driveway and make a left and then talk to Ed in maintenance. You could maybe cut the grass or something. I was like, no, I want to work with kids. I said, my dad used to work with kids. She's like, was your father here? I was like, wait, no, my sister, I used to coach and I've umpired. She's like, I'm sorry, you don't meet the minimum requirements. We need 2 years of college. I said, sister, I think God wants me to work here. I said, can I at least get a tour? Put my arm around her. She says, I guess a tour wouldn't hurt. We got the tour. Long story short, she asked me this question. She says, do you have any references? Well, I didn't know what that meant. I was like, you got me again, sister. What does that mean? She says, will anybody say anything good about you? And I was like, you got me there, sister. She says, well, what are you doing now? I said, I'm in trade school. I was in trade school in the inner city of Detroit. Grand River, Illinois. Trade Union Leadership Council, TULC, for those of you that have been in the trades in Detroit. Fabulous institution. Actually, it's a little small bar. But it got some seed of money in the 70s and early 80s, and they were helping a lot of kids. One of them was me. So she said, I'll call the trade school and get a reference on you, and I'll let you know if we can use you. So I went back and I told my dad, I said, oh yeah, they're going to call me. I always say that when they sent me on jobs. They're going to call me. They never called me. I went to trade school that Monday and I heard the phone ring and I heard Miss Armstrong answer the phone and she says, oh yes, sister, we have a Tom O'Connor here, and she closed the door. That was really strange. 2 days later, the sister called and offered me the job working with kids. Now, that sounds pretty strange. So I was like, went into the trade school on Friday and I said, Miss Armstrong, what did you tell this woman? She said, Tom, I just told them that before you came here, we had fights every day. And then when you came here, we had no more fights. And the sister said, we have fights every day here at the children's home. Do you mind if we hire Mr. O'Connor away to work at the children's home? And that, my friends, is how I got into working with kids in 1980. I was 19 years old. Didn't know much about working with kids, I'll be honest with you. But they put me in an all-star cottage, and I learned from some of the best child development staff in the world. And these people were phenomenal. And I took a little bit of each of their skills and I started molding my own style. And I had some gifts too that God had equipped me with. So for 2 years I was on this all-star team, and then they came to me with this proposal because they had heard I wanted to get into working in the prisons and working with juvenile delinquents, and they asked me if would I be interested in the older kid cottage because they were having a lot of trouble. And they sent me down there, and I worked there for 3 years. And by the time I left there, I had the most major thing that happened to me there is I met my wife. That was a phenomenal transformation. The second thing is I acquired a lot of skills in helping people, helping young people. So in 1986, I was ready to venture out into the world with this new tool chest of helping children. And I was fortunate enough to get a local government that wanted those skills in their community. And I was hired as a public official in 1986. So that began another whole demographic of young people. I was working with at-risk young people, kids who were pre-adjudicated, trying to keep them out of the court system. But one of the tools I want to talk to you today about is the Erik Erikson's 8 stages of development. It is really a psychosocial development he's talking about. These stages, now Erik Erikson, he was not a high-degreed therapist, but he is up there with the pioneers in psychosocial stuff. And he was somebody that I kind of gravitated to early on in the 80s. So if you were one of my volunteers, like I had 400 volunteers helping me with these young people, and if you were one of the families I worked with, this is kind of the model I used to use because it would help me pinpoint where the kid is off track. So I want you to think of these 8 stages. The first stage that Erik Erikson talks about is trust versus mistrust. And this battle takes place from the time we're born to about 2 years old. We learn to trust or mistrust. And we kind of stay stuck in the one that we convince ourselves of. The battle there and the outcome that we're looking for in that very first stage of development is hope. Hope that I can trust someone, hope that I'll be taken care of. The second stage takes place really from toddler to 3 or 4 years old. And that's when you're battling for autonomy versus shame. And the goal is to win each one of these battles and to help your young person win each one of these battles. So your first battle is to make sure that your infant up to that toddler is really building a sense of trust. Secondly, now they have to develop some autonomy. So they're going to actually be battling that versus shame and doubt. The third stage, which really takes place from preschool to say 5 or 6 years old, and that's initiative versus guilt. Taking some initiative, and that's really when we struggle for purpose. You know, the outcome is that we're trying to look for purpose. Can I help mom with the laundry, or can I make my bed? Those types of initiative versus guilt. Then we get into from 6 to 11 or 5 to 12, you're battling industry versus inferiority. Now, as I'm giving you these battles, I want you to think, are you stuck in any of these areas? Because it's very common that I'll be working with adults or parents who haven't conquered these battles. They really have a sense of shame or guilt or inferiority. They didn't win the battle autonomy versus shame, so they've carried shame with them their whole entire life. Or they didn't win the battle between initiative and guilt, so they're awful guilty all the time. And so this next battle is industry versus inferiority is key. These are really, 5 to 12, 6 to 11, the battle's on. Then where my specialty was really in the 12 to 26-year-olds, but let's say this next battle is 12 to 18. It's identity versus role confusion. You could say confusion alone or self-confusion, but I kind of look at it like identity versus role confusion. And here's what happens. We're battling from 12 to 18 on who we are. Or are we just caught up in a role? And are we just constantly changing masks? So this identity versus role confusion, I'll see a lot of time people won't have won that battle and they'll get into an intimate relationship or they'll try to jump a stage. Because the next stage in life is intimacy versus isolation. See, if you don't win the battle that's above it, you're going to struggle in the next stage of development. So identity is key for us to hand off to our teens, help them with that sense of identity versus the role confusion, so that when they move into that 18 to 40 battle, which is intimacy versus isolation. Now I'm gonna challenge you, if you're listening to this, that if you are in a situation where a relationship failed and now you find yourself isolated, I want to help you win that battle. I've worked with a lot of adults or divorced parents and help them reestablish themselves at the identity level so they can go back and win that battle and really find intimacy and go on with the stages of development. They don't want to see you stay stuck. So that's a little teaser right there. If you have an issue where you have a goal and you want to meet somebody nice, but something stops you, I want you to private message me and I'll help you. I've got a great tool for you. So the next battle, intimacy versus isolation. I see a lot of people that hadn't won the battle ahead of that. So they're really confused and they go into an intimate relationship and they wonder why it fails. So after, okay, so let's talk about intimacy and isolation. The battle there, or the outcome you're looking for, is love. Once you've got that, you move into the last two battles. Really, it's the generativity, and I would say that's really to lead the next generation. Generativity versus stagnation. Do you, in your 40 to 65 years old, can you really help the next generation, or can you mentor somebody, or can you hand some tools off at work, or can you hand some tools off, to your nephews and your children? So there we're really talking about the outcome of care. Do you really care? Caring is an action. So generativity versus stagnation. And then the 8th stage that he goes into is really from, I want to say from 60 or 65, and I'm in that area, to death. Your battle is integrity versus despair. You want to sit there in your rocking chair in despair saying, hey, I should have done a video, or I should have talked to somebody about this isolation. Maybe I can help somebody meet somebody nice like I did for, 8 or 10 other clients of mine. These are easy tools to hand off for me. So the last one is integrity versus despair, and that's when we're really looking for that outcome of wisdom. So if you worked with me early on in the 80s, this was one of the models I used. I still find it very fascinating, and I still like to, when I'm working with somebody, if somebody's stuck in an area, like say they have an inferiority complex, and I think Erickson is the guy who coined that phrase, because his model was genius. Even though he didn't have the college degrees of the other guys he was working with or sharing tools with, he was a genius, and this is a very exciting model for me. So I just wanted to bring it back to your attention, let you know that if your child is struggling with mistrust, shame, guilt, inferiority, confusion, isolation, stagnation, despair, any of those things, yourself or your children, we can pinpoint what stage of development you got beat at, and we can go back and we can win that battle. So hey, have a great weekend. It's Friday evening. It's July 2024, and we are halfway through the year. I hope you did what I asked you to do on the last training about writing your goals down. If one of those goals is to find some intimacy and get a good partner, please let me know. I'll help you with some tools. Also, I will say the same thing for inferiority, guilt, shame. If you got stuck back there, we got to go up, and we've got to win that battle for you, so that you can enjoy the trust, the autonomy, the initiative, the industry, the identity, the intimacy, the generativity, and the integrity, and you can win all 8 battles. So good seeing you guys. Have a great weekend.